When it comes to sizing grease interceptors, plumbing codes have always focused on flow rate or liquid volume. But how does that help a restaurant owner know how often to maintain their interceptor? Scheer developed the grease production sizing method to calculate how much grease a particular restaurant is likely to produce in order to ensure that the grease interceptor selected has enough capacity to allow for a realistic and affordable pump-out frequency. So we developed the above categories for restaurants based on feedback from jurisdictions and pumper contractors around the country, combined with reports such as the brown grease study done by Kennedy Jenks back in 2011 for Clean Water Services in Washington County, Oregon, which gives detailed information about restaurant types and menus, as well as grease and solids production data. In order to calculate how much grease a restaurant will produce, you'll need three basic pieces of information. Number one, you need to determine whether the restaurant is a low, medium, or high grease producer, and then whether they have their own flatware or not. That gives you the grease production factor per meal served. Number two, you need to determine the number of customers or meals served each day. And number three, determine the pump-out frequency desired, say 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, for example. Now simply take the number of customers or meals served per day times the grease production per meal times the desired pump-out frequency to determine the amount of grease capacity the interceptor will have to have. So let's take a couple of examples so that you can see that the grease production sizing method really is not very difficult to follow. In our first example, let's look at a fast food hamburger joint that we would consider to be a medium grease producer with no flatware. That's a category C. Let's say that they do 400 meals per day, and then looking at table C or column C, you find 0.025 pounds per meal, which would be the grease loading per meal. And if you multiply those two, you come up with 10 pounds of grease per day. If you multiply that out over a 30-day period, that would be 300 pounds, or 600 pounds every 60 days, or 900 pounds every 90 days. So if you take a look at an interceptor then, say, for example, a GB75. At 75 GPM, it holds 616 pounds of grease. So simply dividing 616 by the amount of grease expected per day, which, as we just calculated, was 10, we find that this interceptor would be able to be maintained on a 61-day pump-out schedule, or 61 days between pump-outs. If the owner wants to go longer, a GB250 at 100 GPM holds 1,076 pounds, which would give them 108 days between pump-outs. For our next example, let's look at a larger facility, something like a popular sports bar or a steakhouse. We would consider them to be a high grease producer with flatware, or category F. So let's say they do something like 642 meals per day. We find from column F that they would be producing 0.455 pounds per meal, and that's 29.2 pounds of grease per day, or 876 pounds of grease every 30 days, or 1,752 pounds of grease every 60 days, or 2,628 pounds of grease every 90 days. Now let's again take a look at a GB250 at 1,076 pounds would have to be maintained every 36 days or once a month. So if you wanted to go 60 days, you would use 2 GB250s, or if you wanted to go 90 days, you would use 3 GB250s. The grease production sizing method works for any grease interceptor regardless of who it's manufactured by. Here's a caution though. How do you know a grease interceptor actually has the capacity claimed by the manufacturer? Only install third-party certified grease interceptors, and ask the manufacturer for their test reports. When you know how much grease a restaurant's going to produce, all you have to do is see how much grease the interceptor is certified to separate and store, and you can figure out how often it will have to be pumped out. For more information, visit us online at scheerproducts.com.